Hello everybody, today we're going to be going over a super active hurricane season update. Currently we are in the midst of one of the most active hurricane seasons on record. Currently if our trend of hurricanes and tropical storms were to continue, we would beat the 2005 hurricane season by quite a bit. So we are going for maybe even 30 tropical storms, or maybe even more. We're most likely going to get into the Greek alphabet later this month or into October. So we really have a lot to go over in today's video. We're going to be going over some of the longer term outlooks for this hurricane season, and also we're going to look at some of the statistical data that we've already seen from the super active hurricane season. So here is the current National Hurricane Center page just to update all of you guys. We currently do have a high chance region of development right there south of where Tropical Storm Renee is and south of the Cape Verde Islands. We also have another area that potentially could move on to the Carolina coast later this week that currently has a medium chance of developing. I believe it's around a 40% chance of developing right now. And then we have, of course, Paulette and Renee, which formed, I believe, yesterday, and they are moving out to the west. Renee is expected to become a hurricane as of right now. So let's take a look at these tracks for these storms real quick. We are looking at this staying as a tropical storm. This one would be Paulette right here, and it looks like it's going to stay as a tropical storm throughout the rest of its lifespan, at least until the next 5 days. And then we'll have to see what happens once it starts to head out into parts of Bermuda and then potentially near the east coast. We'll have to see what happens there. Does it curve away from land, or does it actually move onto land? We'll have to see about that. Now, here would be Tropical Storm Renee or forecasted Hurricane Renee. Currently, it is expected to become a hurricane from the National Hurricane Center sometime right around, I would say, probably Thursday afternoon, and this is Cabo Verde time here in the Eastern Atlantic here. So this would most likely, again, sometime Thursday midday. It will most likely become a hurricane, according to the National Hurricane Center as of right now. Now, something that is really fueling this hurricane season so far is that we've had a very inactive Eastern Pacific. Look at the Eastern Pacific right now. We have a very low chance developing system that only has I think it's about a 10% chance of developing right now. So that one most likely will not develop. So once you or when you have some of these very very active hurricane seasons in the Eastern Pacific, you will tend to have some very very inactive seasons in the Atlantic, and vice versa. Because if you have low pressures in the Eastern Pacific, you're gonna have high pressure in the Atlantic. So what that means is that you're not gonna be able to really get too many storms to form if you have high pressure in place. So the fact that you have high pressure in place over the Eastern Pacific and low pressure over the Atlantic actually indicates that you're seeing a lot of systems just kind of spinning up out of nowhere that is forming our named storms. Luckily, this hurricane season, we have seen mostly tropical storms, and most of them have been out to sea. We've only seen one major hurricane up to this point, and hopefully that trend continues. So most of our storms have still been tropical storms and out to sea. Now, let's start looking at some of the statistical data. Now, taking a look at this in this red area that I outlined here, this is all the records that we've currently broken for the earliest formation of the storm by its letter. So, for example, the earliest formation of the C named storm, we had Cristobal. The earliest formation of the E named storm, we had Edward. So we had broken all of these records in red, and if you actually look to the right of your screen, that's the previous record that we had broken before. So we see that most of these records were held from 2005, and most of you remember 2005 was the most active hurricane season in the Atlantic on record. So that one had 28 named storms, and we are on pace to potentially beat that. And if you actually look at this, here's the records that have been beaten by 10 or more days from their previous record. So all of these purple outlined areas, we broke that record 10 or more days before the previous storm formed. So that is really, really interesting to see just how far ahead of schedule we are. And right now, if you look actually at at Renee, and then going further down the list, you see that we have to go to October 2nd for the next storm that was formed, the next S named storm. So if we already have Renee and we have two areas that have a medium or high chance of developing, we're most likely going to get the S named storm within the next 3 to 5 days. That knocks off the S storm, and then we just keep on going down the list. And I think we could really get pretty far down the list, and maybe even go off the list. Maybe we get to 29 or 30 storms this hurricane season, or maybe even more. Now, here is the list of the most storms, or the most active hurricane seasons on record. So we see here's 2020, and this is so far as of 2020. We're already getting up on the charts. We're I believe already the 10th most active hurricane season on record so far. Actually, the ninth most active hurricane season on record so far, and we're tied already for the eighth most active hurricane season on record with 2017. That one had 17 tropical storms by that point. So you see, 2017, we're already tied with that, and we're only just getting into the most active time period in the Atlantic hurricane season. Then look at this red outlined area. These are all very well within reach. If both of those storms out in the Atlantic form within the next couple of days, we're already nearing the 2005 hurricane season. That would be our next most active hurricane season if we assume that we're going to get at least two more tropical storms or hurricanes or whatever they may be by the end of the hurricane season, which I'm fairly certain we will do. Then we're already the second most active hurricane season, and then we have 2005 to contend with, which will definitely be a big mountain to climb, but it is still very, very doable with the pace that we're at currently. Now, here would be just something that I want to show you because of how active this hurricane season looks to be in the coming days. Now, right now, I'll show you this in a later part of the video. We're actually in a sinking air environment, and we're still seeing many storms developing. And later on in the period, we look to actually go into a rising air environment. So that is something to note, because it will most likely increase our hurricane potential as we move on. So we currently have, or this would actually be 240 hours out, so this would be Thursday the 17th of September, and I'm going to show you three different models. Here's the European model, and it has one storm, it has two storms, three storms, and potentially a fourth storm that kind of wants to cut off and move to the south, and then we have a fifth storm, depending on whether that storm cuts off or not. But we have 4 to 5 storms out in the Atlantic by this point, according to the European model. Now let's look at the GFS. The GFS has 3 storms. We have one storm here, one storm here, and we have one storm trying to form out here. So that's 3 storms by Thursday the 17th. Now let's look at the Canadian model and what it has. Now the Canadian model is a little bit different. It has one storm here, one storm trying to get off here, another storm up here, one storm over here, and one that's about to develop right here. So that's 5 from the Canadian. So assuming we get into a more favorable environment, which is forecasted, we have definitely a very active season ahead of us. Now, here is the environmental conditions as of when these storms are going to be forming. So this is basically the dust in the atmosphere coming off of Africa, and we are looking at a very minor amount of dust. I'll actually do this in a different color here. We are looking at a very minor amount of dust in the Atlantic. If you remember earlier in the hurricane season, we had a very massive dust wave that went through even parts of the United States. We're not seeing anything like that. You were seeing values that were up very high on the charts, off the charts in some cases, and they were in the yellows and the whites pretty much. We're only in the light blues, and this is a very negligent amount of dust in the atmosphere, and that is definitely something that you can surpass, and it's nothing that the storm really has to contend with. Now, let's look at your sea surface temperatures. Now, here are your anomalies for those sea surface temperatures. If you actually looked on the thumbnail, that was my temperature anomaly, my sea surface temperature anomaly forecast from my previous hurricane season forecast. Now, you might have noticed that along the East Coast, I had warmer or much warmer than normal temperatures, and that is the case right now. We have a lot of warm waters off the East Coast, and that actually extends fairly far out, and that is something I wasn't expecting. Some very warm temperatures all the way up through the northern Atlantic and all throughout the area that that these storms are really gonna go through. Now, you might be wondering why are there little blue spots here off the coast of Africa? That's mainly just because we've had so many storms move through there and form there that it's upwelling some cooler waters, and that is lowering the sea surface temperatures. But we are still looking at definitely temperatures that you can still form tropical storms or hurricane with. Now, here is your 7-day anomaly change from your sea surface temperatures. We actually have some warming out through parts of the Gulf of Mexico and off the East Coast, and as well for parts of the Eastern Caribbean, but over parts of the Western Caribbean and also the Southern Gulf of Mexico, some cooling as well as for parts off of the coast of Africa, and that's just because of how active it has been recently. Now, here is your actual sea surface temperature anomalies, or the actual temperatures, and we are looking at anywhere in that yellow, the orange, the reds, or even the pinks that's above 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is generally the benchmark temperature for sustaining a hurricane or some sort of tropical storm. And all throughout the Atlantic, we are above that benchmark. The only regions that aren't within that is off the coast of northern Africa, as well as off the mid-Atlantic and northeast coast. Other than that, pretty much the entire Atlantic development region is under some warmer temperatures and definitely conducive for development of some tropical storms or hurricane. Now, let's start looking at the velocity, and this is showing you rising or sinking air over parts of pretty much the entire southern hemisphere. You are looking at rising air, and that is in the green. Sinking air is over parts of the northern hemisphere as of right now, and this is the GFS model and what it's showing. And this is as of this is as of pretty much right now, as of when I'm speaking. So we already see a lot of storms that are firing up over this part of the Atlantic, and look where that part of the Atlantic is. It's in it's sinking air, so you can still have storms in the sinking air. And if we are going to go off this model and what it's showing, it's actually going to go into a little bit of a more averaged out air. It's not going to be as much of a sinking motion, and you will actually see some rising motion off the coast of Africa as we go later on. And this is only 96 hours out, so only about 4 days out, and we're already seeing this. So if right now we are already seeing some of these really active tropics with this very sinking and dry air, definitely imagine what we could see with some rising air within the next 4 days or so, and maybe just a little bit less sinking air. We could definitely have quite an active hurricane season on our hands. Definitely go to the National Hurricane Center's website. Hurricanes.gov, I believe, is the URL link if you want to check that out. Definitely, they update that. I believe I believe they actually update that 4 times a day. So definitely check that regularly. I do. I definitely do, and just definitely check it regularly so that you're not missing anything. And of course, I update you guys on my YouTube channel. If you want to subscribe, if you are not already, definitely go do that so that you can get updates when we do get these big tropical storms or hurricanes that move through. I'll definitely be updating you guys. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.